ಮನದ ಮಾತೊಂದ ಬಿಚ್ಚಿಡು ಬಚ್ಚಿಟ್ಟ ಮನದ ಕನಸೊಂದ ಹಿಂದೆ ಸಮಯ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಡಲು ನಮ್ಮ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ನಿನ್ನ ಸಾಹಸ ರಥಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾರಥಿಯಾಗಿ ಮುನ್ನಡೆಸಿದೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಾನಂಗಳ ಕೆಳೆದೊಯ್ಯುವ ರೆಕ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಕೂಡಿದೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಲಿಸನ್ ಟು ಯುವರ್ ಹಾರ್ಟ್.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಗ್ಲೋಬಲ್ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರೇ. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ನ ಈ ವಾರದ ಸಂಚಿಕೆಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ತಂಡದ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾದ ಗೋವರ್ಧನ್ ಗೌಡ, ರವಿ ಪಾಂಗಲ್, ಸುರೇಶ್ ಬಾಬು, ವಿನೋದ್ ಕುಮಾರ್, ಲೋಕಿ, ಆರ್ಜೆ ಅನು, ಆರ್ಜೆ ರಮ್ಯಾ, ಆರ್ಜೆ ದಿಲೀಪ್, ಆರ್ಜೆ ರಮ್ಯಾ, ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ್ ಹಾಗೂ ನನ್ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಸೂಪರ್ ವಾರ್ಮ್ ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್. ಹೇಗ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವೀಕೆಂಡ್? ನಾವು ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಹಾಗೆ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಲೈವ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಮ್ದು ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಾಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಪೇಜ್ ಕೂಡ ಇದೆ. ಫಾಲೋ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನ ಮಾತ್ರ ಖಂಡಿತ ಮರಿಬೇಡಿ. Today's episode will be super duper insightful. We will delve into some of the most pressing challenges that we are facing today. We have the privilege of engaging with the leading voices in the fields of climate change, global warming, and food waste, topics that are not only interconnected but also hold profound implications for the future of our planet. ನೀವೇ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ಗ್ಲೋಬಲ್ ವಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್ ನ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್. ನೀವು ಹವಾಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ವೈಲ್ಡ್ ಫೈರ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬ್ಯೂಟಿಫುಲ್ ಐಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಮಾವಿ ಇಸ್ ಸಫರಿಂಗ್. ಹಾಗೆ ಈವನ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ಕ್ಯಾಲಿಫೋರ್ನಿಯಾ ಸಮ್ಮರ್ ಅಥವಾ ಫಾಲ್ ಸೀಸನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಿ ಸಿ ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ವೈಲ್ಡ್ ಫೈರ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಮೇಜರ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಫೇಸಿಂಗ್. So I promise you, throughout this interview, we will uncover the intricate connections between, again, climate change, global warming, food waste, highlighting the urgency of collective actions and the potential for transformative change. So today we have two esteemed panelists. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಶ್ರೀಯುತ Dr. Sailesh Rao ಅವರು. I'm going to give a very brief introduction. Dr. Sailesh Rao has over 3 decades of professional experience, is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a non-profit committed to addressing climate change. Holding a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, he led groundbreaking work in internet communications for 2 decades post-graduation. His contributions to signal processing and technology significantly advanced high-definition television, real-time video communications, and digital internet connections. He also received multiple awards for his technical achievements, including one from AT&T Bell Laboratories and Intel Technology. In 2006, he transitioned to environmental activism. ನಾವು ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೂಡ ತುಂಬಾ ಮಾತಾಡಿದಿದೆ. Authoring 4 books and producing documentaries like Cowspiracy and What the Health. As a human earth and animal liberation activist, he is determined to realize a largely vegan world by 2026 for the sake of his granddaughter. He's been recognized as a climate hero by The Guardian in 2023 and has received honors such as Karamveer Puraskar, Global Indian Award, and the Winsome Constance Kindness Medal. We also have Prateeksha, an accomplished entrepreneur with 14 years of experience in technology and working for companies like Yahoo, Microsoft Research. She has founded a company called CutWaste with a vision to combat food waste and climate change through technology. Holding a master's degree in computer science and business, she recently launched the CutWaste app powered by AI, which offers expiry alerts, personalized recipes, and tailored grocery lists to manage household food waste effectively. Prateeksha's passion for sustainability led her to address the alarming statistics that 1/3 of global food production is wasted, contributing to 11% of emissions. Wow. So CutWaste aims to empower families to reduce waste, save money, and contribute to a healthier planet. I'm super excited and to learn more on how we as individuals can change our life habits. ಹಾಗೆ ಸಣ್ಣ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಇಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ಲಾನೆಟ್ಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಕಾಪಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದಿನ ಜನರೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ನ್ಯಾಚುರಲ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ನ ಸೇವ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ, ನಿಮಗೆ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ಕಾತರದಿಂದ ಕಾಯ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಶೈಲೇಶ್ ಅವರೇ ಹಾಗೆ ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ ಅವರೇ, ವೆಲ್ಕಮ್ ಟು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್. ಹೇಗ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ವೀಕೆಂಡ್?
Thank you so much for having us. Weekend is going very well, thanks to you. Started here.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you,
Prateeksha?
Prithvi. Thank you, Prithvi. So honored to be here and to be talking to your audience. Yeah, weekend's good so far. Great start.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸೋ ಮಚ್ ಫಾರ್ ಜಾಯ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಅಸ್. ನನ್ನ ಮೊದಲನೇ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶೈಲೇಶ್ ಅವರೇ ನಿಮಗೆ. ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ದು ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್. ಸೊ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್, ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ವೈರ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಅವೇರ್ನೆಸ್ ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಯ್ತು? ವಾಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪಿರೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ದ ಟರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್? ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯು ವಾಕ್ ಅಸ್ ಥ್ರೂ ಯುವರ್ ಜರ್ನಿ?
Yeah, ನಾನು had a startup back in 2006. It was called 510, and I was working on making 10 gigabit Ethernet. So doing the same thing that I did 10 times faster. So on this one, I ಬಂದಿದ್ದೆ. I was very tired. Sofaದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು I turned on the TV, and there was Al Gore talking about climate change. He called it global warming at that time. And this was before his movie, An Inconvenient Truth, had come out. So it was 2005 December. And I was rooted to the sofa. I couldn't move because I said, if half of what he's saying is true, what is everybody doing? We should all be working on this full time. Okay? So ಹಾಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೆ ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಹತ್ರ, ಜೈನಿ. ಅವಳು ಹೇಳಿದ್ಲು, if you think it's that important, why don't you look into it? Why are you still working on 10 gigabit Ethernet? So I started looking into it, and I realized it's far worse than what he's saying. See, even though I worked with wires, I'm actually a systems engineer. So I got my PhD from the Information Systems Laboratory at Stanford University. So systems engineering, PhD ಮಾಡಿ ಮುಗಿಯುವಾಗ I had gone to my advisor and I said, is this what a PhD is? I just took one problem and beat it to death. And he said, no, that's not why I gave you a PhD. He said, I gave you a PhD because you can take any problem in any field and make a credible contribution to it. So he gave me that confidence that I can go look into anything else, because ultimately it's all mathematics, you know. And so I started looking into it, and within 3 months I closed my company because I was shocked by what I found. You know, it's far worse than what Al Gore was saying. So literally our house is on fire, right? Our planet is on fire. And if your house is on fire and everybody is sitting around smoking cigarettes and throwing ash, cigarette butts into the fire, how is the fire ever going to come down? So we have to get up and start pouring water on the fire. We have to do the opposite of what you were doing.
Wow. So you just closed the company, and what happened next?
Close ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು I wrote to Mr. Gore and I said, how can I help you? And he asked me to come and get trained by him. So I got trained by him in 2006 November. And then I went around talking about this, what he had presented for a year. That was my commitment to him. And while I was talking about this, I realized that he's not telling the whole story. So it's about our entire lifestyle. The way he's presenting it, he's saying, continue doing what you're doing, but just use solar panels. And I'm saying, no, that doesn't put out the fire, because when you use solar panels, you're not changing what is in the atmosphere. You're only not adding any more. But you're not taking it down. Okay. So our carbon dioxide levels have already gone to 420 parts per million. And we know that going above 350 parts per million is dangerous. Okay. It is bad for the planet. So as if the planet has a fever. See, when the planet has a fever is always a symptom. It's not the disease. There is a cancer that's underlying the fever. So suppose you go to a doctor with a cancer, and the cancer is very visible. It's like a big growth on the side of your head, say like a coconut size growth. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, I will make sure your fever doesn't go over 2 degrees Celsius, while you grow another lump the size of a coconut on the other side of your head. wouldn't you think that this doctor is incompetent?
Mm-hmm.
But that's exactly how we are treating the planet. Okay. So it's unacceptable, in my opinion. And so we have to look at the cancer, which is our lifestyle. How are we dealing with our planet? What kind of relationship do we have with the planet? What kind of relationship do we have with each other? What relationship do we have with the animals?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are the animals the fellow passengers on the planet, or are they here just for us to kill, which is what we have been doing? You know,
Got it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So I will come back to the topic of global warming, climate change. I also want to understand, Pratiksha, ನೀವ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಈ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದು? Were you always interested in this, or was it something that Dr. Sailesh ಅವ್ರು ನಿಮಗೆ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು? Do you have Pratiksha?
It's a wonderful question, Prithvi. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer like Sailesh Uncle, where, it did not, I was not sitting back and the idea came into my mind and I was like, hey, let me do this. Rather, I think for me, it came together as a result of many different experiences, incidents, influences, inspirations through my life. So I want to call out two specific such inspirations and how it came together. I think firstly, it was really growing up in India, and the kind of household that I was brought up in. And I think many in the audience will relate to this, but food waste was considered almost a sin in our household. ಏನ್ ಬಡ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಯೋ ಅದ್ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬೇಕು, ನೀ ಎಷ್ಟ್ ಬೇಕಾ ಬಟ್ ಎಷ್ಟ್ ಬಡ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಯೋ ಅಷ್ಟ್ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. So that was like a pretty big issue growing up as a kid. And of course, we were told how there were kids starving all over the world, and we had the privilege of having food on our plate, and how dare we waste it. And so much so that there's this funny incident from my childhood that my mother keeps telling me. I don't remember it, but I was a young kid and we were at madve mane yardo madvege hogidvi, and we were sitting at the bale ele ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಕ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಕೂತಿದ್ವಿ, and food was being served. And you know how it is, you have people carrying buckets of food and just like serving more and more
Correct.
food. And as a child, with this strong idea in my mind that I have to finish everything on my plate, I was sitting there and feeling overwhelmed at all the food on my plate, to the point that apparently I just started crying. I broke down and I was like, "Amma, ishtu mugsakagala nange naan ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿ?" So all that is to say, like, that was such a deep-rooted idea in my mind at that point. And then fast forward like 20, 30 years, life moved on. I moved here, and in America, it's a completely different system that we live in. We go into supermarkets, we are, huge supermarket aisles, huge packages of food. We have a huge refrigerator in our kitchen. Many of us have a second refrigerator in our garage. We have huge pantries. So everything in the system, back to Shailesh Uncle's point, it's a systemic issue. Everything in the system is forcing you to buy more.
Correct.
And when you think about food, it's, if you buying more, if you think about ಬಟ್ಟೆ ತಗೊಂಡಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, you are able to reuse it. You buy it once and you wear it multiple times, and when you're tired of it, you may give it away and somebody else may be able to use it. So it's a commodity which can be reused, whereas a consumable is not reusable. You consume it once and it's done.
Mm.
And food is a perishable consumable, so you can only use it once and you have to use it within that specific period of time, because it's going to perish after that. So in some way, food is the highest volume commodity, a product that we consume, which is the highest propensity to be wasted because it has such a short lifespan. uh, but at the same time, it's also some of the cheapest kinds of products that we use. So we don't think about it as much. We don't think about the waste as a big deal. So as a result, I feel like we live in a system very different from the one that at least I remember growing up in. And as this was going on, the second inspiration, of course, was Stylish Uncle. He brought the idea of sustainability into to the audience. I want to just call out that Sailesh Uncle is actually my mama. So I have a lot of experience like interacting with him growing up. So Dr. Sailesh, or Sailesh Uncle, introduced me to sustainability, climate change. We went vegan in our house old in 2016. We bought an electric car in 2017. So overall, in my lifestyle, I was trying to bring in these changes. So this idea was taking root. And last year, I think both of it came together because I was hitting midlife. I gave up my age. So I was hitting midlife. I was having this typical midlife crisis. Hey, what am I doing with my life? What do I want to look back on? And when I'm like 80 or 70 or whatever it is. And so and at that point, I felt like, no, I have to do something that's meaningful, rewarding with all of my time, and not just make these changes in my lifestyle. And so that sort of drove me to thinking about doing something on my own. And once I said, okay, sustainability, I started to look at opened up sustainability or climate change as a problem, and looked at what are all the different areas which needs help, which needs work. What are the areas which is underrepresented, where not enough work is being done. And that's when I discovered food waste as like this huge problem area that no one really talks about, many are not even aware of. And that sort of resonated with me because I come from this value system where food was considered like almost god. And so all of that came together, and CutWaste was formed.
Very inspiring, Prateeksha. Yeah, most of us are hitting the midlife crisis very early, actually. Yeah, and I can totally relate to what you just said about food waste. ನನ್ಗೂ ಟೆನ್ಷನ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಇಂಡಿಯಾಗ್ ಬಂದಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಅಂತೂ ಎಲ್ರ ಮನೇಲಿ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ಕರಿತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ವೆರಿ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಅಪಟೈಟ್. ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ತಟ್ಟೆಲಿರೋದು ಅಂತ ಟೆನ್ಷನ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದಕ್ಕರ್ಧ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ಅರ್ಧ ಬೇಗ ತುಂಬಿಟ್ಟಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಟೋಟಲಿ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಸಣ್ಣ ವಯಸ್ಸಿಂದು ಇನ್ಸಿಡೆಂಟ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಶೇರಿಂಗ್. I want to go back to Dr. Sailesh ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ. So very simple terms ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಈಗ what is global warming and what is climate change? What is the current, ಇವಾಗ again I talked about wildfires and everything. How is the situation right now? Can you explain to our audience?
Yeah, it's a very critical situation right now, and we don't have too many years left to continue doing what we are doing. In fact, I don't know if we have any more years left. If we have already gone beyond the point of no return, I do not know that. In any complex system like this, which is the climate system is very complex, we know that there are several situations that are getting out of control, like the melting of the Arctic, the melting of Greenland, melting of Antarctica, the wildfires everywhere, monsoons being erratic. And so all those things are already happening. And the only way we will know whether we have gone beyond the point of no return is when we start reversing our greenhouse gas emissions, not just adding less. It's actually start sucking it down. You have to start sucking it down, and then you can verify whether we have gone beyond the point of no return or not. Okay. So the situation is very dire. And it's not just climate change, it's also loss of wild animals, loss of biodiversity. It's the ecosystems collapsing. And then the conditions for life on the planet becoming harsh. So what that means is that we may be on our, trying to kill ourselves off, literally, by doing something really foolish, right? It's so our relationship with the earth, our relationship with animals is the most important thing in this equation. Climate change is, as I said, it's a symptom. It's like the fever. Okay? We have cut half the trees on the planet. There used to be 6 trillion trees on the planet. Now, if you look at a satellite map of the world, it looks like Mother Earth has a bald spot, because we have cut half the trees on the planet. So each tree is like a hair on Mother Earth. Okay, so there are only 3 trillion trees left. And each tree holds carbon dioxide. In fact, the tree grows by taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and converting it to cellulose and putting it as part of the trunks and the leaves and so on. So if you look at the weight of a tree, if you measure the weight of a tree, that's almost exactly the weight of carbon dioxide that got stored in the tree. So on average, a tree holds 1 ton of carbon dioxide. So that's 1,000 kgs of carbon dioxide. The average tree. Okay, that's the tree itself. And then the soil around the tree holds another 1.5 tons. So another 1,500 kgs of carbon dioxide. So when you cut a tree, you're essentially taking 2.5 tons of carbon dioxide and putting it into the atmosphere. That's what we have done. So we have actually put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere by cutting trees than we have done by burning fossil fuels over the last 10,000 years. Okay. And now there is a way to bring it back, which is to bring back the trees that you cut. So we have to restore the ecosystems of the planet. So that is the equivalent of pouring water on the fire, as opposed to pouring gasoline on the fire, right? So you can bring back the ecosystems that we cut, bring back the Western Ghats, bring back the Amazon that you're cutting, the Congo that you're cutting. I mean, there are so many forests and ecosystems that we have destroyed, and we can bring them back. There are enough wild animals left now that we can bring them back, and the wild animals will come back. But we are on track to wipe out almost all the wild animals by 2026. This is why I'm saying that the situation is very critical. It is dire, and we need to make a change very, very quickly. And when we go vegan, what we are saying is we do not want to use any animal products. Okay, whether it's for food or clothing or any purpose whatsoever. Now, when we raise animals, we actually are cutting down the forest and converting the forest into grazing land to graze the animals, right? For dairy or beef, or mutton. I mean, all these things come from animals that graze. So that's where the trees went. The trees got destroyed to provide grazing land for our cows and our goats and our sheep. And they're only providing 12% of the food we eat. Okay, 85% of the food we eat already comes from plant sources. So it's only replacing 15% of the food with plant sources. Then you'll have a vegan world. Okay, and if we did that, all that land that we're using for grazing can be restored back to forests. And if we do that, the climate will cool. It's actually very simple arithmetic, because we have added about 1.2 trillion tons, or the equivalent of 1.2 trillion trees of extra CO2 in the atmosphere. So if you want to bring that down, you have to plant about 2 trillion trees at least, a little bit more, because as the trees start sucking down the CO2, some of the other CO2 that was stored on the earth will come back out. So this is why you need to plant a little bit more trees than just what's in the atmosphere.
That brings me back to another question, Sir Yenandre. So I have seen both set of people, Ivaga. Again, it's like global warming, climate change. It's like a controversial subject when it comes to politics, right? So there are certain set of people who argue that infrastructure agirbodu, human development, it's like population is increasing. So you need to have all the modern facilities and infrastructures to be built. So, and there are certain set of people who want us to be mindful and talk about planting trees. So what is your take, and how do you explain this critical situation to people like with that kind of mindset, right? Because when there are certain people who are going, like Prateeksha saying, going electric car, like not adding too much, not adding the fuel to the fire. But again, there are certain, I don't care, like this is what is needed for human development. So what is your take on that?
Well, there is no human development on a dead planet. Okay, the planet is perfectly capable of wiping us out and starting over. See, for the planet, 100 years is nothing. Okay, planet deals with million-year cycles. So if it takes her 1 million years to restore life, She says, okay, that's what you want, I'll do it. Whatever we do to the earth, she just gives you more of the same. Okay, this is how nature works, right? So you are asking nature, hey, I don't like these animals, I'm going to kill them. She says, okay, I'll kill more. So, or if you kill trees, she kills more. So she burns more. So essentially, she's amplifying whatever we are doing to her. Now, if you start planting trees, she will plant too. If you go to Sadhana Forest, right, in Auroville, where they restored the ecosystem that used to be there, they tell me that 1 out of 3 trees they planted. The other 2 were planted by nature. Okay, so when we start restoring the ecosystem, nature starts helping us. When you start chopping down the ecosystems, nature starts helping us too. He says, okay, if you want that, I'll destroy everything for you. But the only thing is, we need to know, if we keep going this way, we are going to go over a cliff and we are going to die. And it's not that far off. And I don't even know if we have already gone over the cliff. Okay, that's how dire the situation is.
So it's not about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves.
Exactly. The planet will be,
it's very scary. Like I'm really ಇಷ್ಟು ಸ್ಕೇರ್ಡ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಂಗೆ ಭಯ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಥಿಂಕಿಂಗ್, ಓಕೆ, ಟಾಪ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಹೆಡ್, ಲೈಕ್ ಕ್ಲೈಮೇಟ್ ಚೇಂಜ್, ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಡೂ ಅವರ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ. ಬಟ್ ದ ವೇ ಯು ಆರ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನಿಂಗ್, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಟೆಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್.
Yeah, it's not just, as I said, it's not, climate change is just a symptom. If you look at, there's a systems analysis done by the Stockholm Resilience Center, and they have this framework called the planetary boundaries framework. Okay, and they say these are the planetary boundaries. Don't go around outside these boundaries, otherwise you're going to be in danger. That's what that means. And there are 6 boundaries that we have crossed as humanity, and we have crossed the boundary that is the least crossed, meaning the one that is the least crossed, is climate change. The other 5, we have crossed them even more. The number one.
Can you name the other 5?
You want to know the 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So nitrogen cycle is one. So we are taking nitrogen from the atmosphere, we are turning it into fertilizers and then putting it into the rivers, and the rivers, then it causes dead zones in the ocean. Phosphorus cycle is another one. Land use change. So we have taken over 91% of the land for ourselves. Only 9% is left for wild animals. Okay. Water cycle. So we have crossed the boundaries on that water cycle. Biodiversity loss. So the loss of wild animals. So just to give you some statistics on that, we killed 52% of wild animals between 1970 and 2010. And that became 58% by 2012 and 68% by 2016. So we are on track to hit almost 100% by 2026. But it takes 4 years to compile the data on this. So we have a lag, when we do the measurement, right? So I'm saying, you can actually put it in a model and look at it, and it will tell you that you're in a danger zone already. See, suppose you discover that 90% of Indians have been wiped out. Wouldn't you say India is in a danger zone, that we need to do something about it?
Yeah.
Exactly what's happening to the wild animals. Okay. And we are causing it. They're not dying on their own. We are killing them. We are taking away their habitat. Okay? We are bottom trawling the ocean because we want to eat fish. So every one of our activities, we have to look at it and say, how is this impacting the planet? And the number one activity that's impacting the planet is our food system. Okay, because that's using the most amount of land, and it's actually using the entire ocean also, because there are very few fish left in the ocean. And so to catch the fish, we have to use software, and we have to then know where they're going to be and then send the ships over there. There are 1 million ships constantly going around the ocean trying to catch fish. And they're all being fed by software telling them where to go. And they have nets that are like 90 miles long. And they drag it from the bottom of the ocean to catch the fish. So they kill everything when they do that. Okay. And how much food are they giving us by doing all this? Only 3% of our food by weight. Is it worth it to eat fish?
Wow.
Okay. Same thing with on land. We are using 37% of our land just as grazing land. And another 6%, which means half of the crops we grow, we are feeding our animals. So world hunger is the choice we make every day when we eat. If you're eating animal foods, you are saying, I don't mind somebody else going hungry. Okay. So when we have that lack of awareness of the impact of what we are doing, we are just, like zombies, right? On the planet, just killing everything as we go along.
So I think you tied it to the food management ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅದನ್ನ you tied it to the environmental crisis that we are facing. So I want to ask Prateeksha about her app, how it is contributing, to reduce all this. So you can start by saying, again, how it started, like what was the reason behind starting it? I know you have some statistics to explain, the deforestation ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, soil, pollution ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಹಾಗೆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ ವೇಸ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ. ಸೊ ಕೆನ್ ಯು ಗಿವ್ ಅಸ್ ಅ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಹೌ ಯುವರ್ ಆಪ್ ಇಸ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪಿಂಗ್ ಅಸ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕ್ರೈಸಿಸ್?
Yeah, sure. So, the more I learned about food waste last year, to be honest, the more I was, you know, surprised, I mean, shocked, I would say, that something that, we are doing without even thinking is having this kind of an effect. And typically, because food is organic, and, when lay people like us think about the word organic, we always think it's good, it's green, things are sold saying organic this, organic that, right? So in fact, someone asked me, hey, food is organic, so why is that an issue? Sorry, food waste, that's why is it an issue that we're wasting it? It's just going to decompose. So what I learned is, when you're wasting 1/3 of food, which is what we're doing right now, 1/3 of food produced is wasted. You are wasting all the resources that went into producing that food, right? And all of the impact that food production had. And remember, food is the number one commodity that we use because we need it every day. We have to eat 3 times a day, right? And we don't have to buy 3 new pairs of shirts every day, but we have to eat 3 new, like, fresh food every day. So by volume, the most used commodity, we are wasting 1/3 of it. So all of the resources that went into growing that food, including all that Dr. Sailesh spoke about, right? Especially if it is meat, right? That much more resources that has gone into growing that animal up to 2 years, letting it graze on land, feeding it, letting it, fart and creating that methane. And so all of the impact that animal has had growing up 2 years, then just to kill it for a few meals, right? So it's a huge amount of resources that has gone into growing that food. And then you have the resources that go into processing the food, storing the food. You need like refrigeration to store it, transporting the food. So there's a whole lot of resources that goes into putting that food on the table. And when you throw away 1/3 of it, you're basically wasting all of those resources. So that's the number one reason why food waste is a contributor. And the second reason is, when you throw away food, not all of it goes into composting, or not all of it is composted. Most of it goes into landfills, right? So 25% of the landfills nowadays are made up of food waste or organic waste. And what happens there is that organic matter that would have decomposed in a natural way and would have absorbed oxygen from the nature to convert itself back into natural elements, which is what the act of composting is, that doesn't happen in a landfill. In a landfill, because all that organic waste is buried under all of the plastic and all these other things, it does not able to access oxygen, and therefore it emits methane, which is another greenhouse gas. CO2 is something we all hear about, but methane is another greenhouse gas, which is 80x or 200x sometimes. I think 200x more potent at absorbing heat from the environment. So that is the second way in which food waste contributes to climate change. And the way that I like to think about it very simply is like climate change right now, I think, is like the earth wearing a blanket. If you were to just wrap earth in a blanket. And why do we wear a blanket? It's not that the blanket creates heat. No, it is that the blanket just prevents the heat created by our body from escaping. Right? So the blanket is very good at keeping all that heat within your cocoon and making you feel warm. But if you keep that blanket on for very long, and if you continue to generate a lot of heat, and if you bring in another electric stove and stick it under your blanket, you're going to start to boil at some point. And of course, we can pull off the blanket, but on the earth, we cannot just remove that layer of gas that we have created. Right? So we need to suck that gas back in and not emit more gases. So that's how I like to think about climate change in general, and all of these emissions coming from food waste being a huge factor. So I mean, high level, I think the stats that sort of blew my mind are 1/3 of the food being wasted, of course, and then when you look at where that food waste is happening, right down the supply, like the value chain, there are it's very interesting. In places like North America and Europe, you find that nearly 50 to 60% of the food waste is in homes, is in households. It's not in restaurants, it's not in institutions, it's not in retail stores, or it's not in farms. Whereas on the other hand, in Africa and South Asia, where India is, less than 10% of the food waste happens at home. Back to our household memories of how we are not as wasteful a society in homes. But most of the food waste in India happens upstream because not enough infrastructure to transport that food well, not enough infrastructure to store that food in cool enough conditions, etc. So any food waste solution, I believe, needs to be applied. If you're looking at the Asia or in Africa market, there is a lot of good work people are doing to think about how can farmers and at the agriculture and transportation level reduce food waste. But in the developed world, so-called developed world, in America and in Europe, more than half of the food waste is in homes, and we don't do anything about it. There isn't a scaled solution. There is not enough awareness. I was surprised by it last year, and everybody I've spoken to has been surprised by it. And so that is what got me thinking, what can I do in my own home to make it easier for me to reduce waste? And so it came down to two things, right? One, we need to buy lesser. There's no two ways about it, because we do buy like 40% more than we need. And food is a perishable product. So you buy more, you can't do anything with it. It will spoil, right? So you need to buy less. But how do you know? Like, most people don't even know that they're buying more. That awareness isn't there. And then two, you buy, and then we put it away in our huge pantries and in our refrigerators, and we forget about it. It's not easy to track all of the different things in our pantry, and the one day then we sometimes suddenly wanted to do something, we pull out that ingredient and we find out that it is spoiled, and then we throw it away. So that's the typical experience that I have had, and I've seen a lot of people I spoke to had. And so that's why the CutWaste app, which I launched last month, actually, so it's a very recent development. It helps you with expiry alerts for food in your pantry. So it helps you focus on, of 500 things in your pantry, here are the 20 things you need to be paying attention to. So make sure you use it in your next meal, So it gives you that sort of insight. It also gives you custom recipes. We've all been thinking about how can we use AI to, make things easier for us. So what the app does is uses AI to generate new recipes. These are not existing recipes that we are simply looking up from the internet, but these are the AI is like generating interesting new recipes based on what is in your pantry. So it's kind of like, every day you have this, what do I make today? I wish somebody would just tell me what to make. I mean, I feel like every single person has had that problem. And so the app just takes what is in your pantry. It knows what's going to expire soon. So it's going to use that information and give you interesting, recommendations for what you could make out of it. It also gives you, because we know what you're using and how much you're using, it also gives you a smarter shopping list. So when you go shopping, it knows, okay, here are the things you've run out of. These things you end up wasting mostly. So maybe you buy less of it. These are the things that you usually end up using. So and you buy frequently. So it gives you all of that information in a way that it's a simple shopping list, but it has all of that pieces of information there. So you can, you can use that when you shop. And then finally, it also gives you analytics. So it gives you an understanding of how much we buy, how much we waste, which categories are we wasting most, what are the top products that we're wasting, right? And how we and storage tips for how we could reduce that waste. How can I store this thing better? How can I reuse this thing better? So so those are the things that it helps you do, and I'm hoping that it has been very helpful for me, and I'm hoping that more and more people will find it helpful, and therefore it will be a convenient and easy way for you to make this change, which is overall positive for everyone. An average household wastes in America wastes $1,900 worth of food each year, which is more than a month's rent. So I'm saying average household. So a California household will be easily double of that. So on average, a month's worth of rent or more than a month's worth of rent is what you are throwing away each year on food waste. So you can save that money. You can, help feed the planet as a result of not wasting it. And 3, you can, protect and save or heal the planet, and therefore, help ourselves. So that's how I think about it.
First of all, congratulations, Prateeksha avare, nimma app ge hage. I know it's a recent app, but I mean, ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಅನ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ, how interconnected everything is. ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೂಡ ಎಷ್ಟು ಮೇಜರ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ. So again, just to bring in some humor, right? I was traveling from US to India. This time I was very mindful because last time I had I know that I'm traveling in a week, but you end up buying so much groceries because tomato na okay, Costco hode one box tande itte. How much will you use, right? Yeah. So last you don't have time to give it to your like the last minute you will just throw it away. So I think it's the story of ಎಲ್ರ ಮನೆ ಕತೆ ಆಗೋಗಿದೆ ಇದು. So I want to address, I know your app tracks it, everything, but I also want to address how individually we can start making changes in our lifestyle so it brings in more effect on any of the environmental crises we are facing. So ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ ಹಾಗೆ I also have some controversial questions that I want to ask Dr. Sailesh ಅವ್ರನ್ನ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆನ್ನೆಲುಬಾಗಿ ನಿಂತವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸರ್ಸ್, ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಬರೋಣ. ವಿಲ್ ಟೇಕ್ ಅ ವೆರಿ ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ದಿಸ್ ಅಮೇಜಿಂಗ್ ಎಪಿಸೋಡ್.
Finlo Tax, the leading tax consultant in the Bay Area. ಪ್ರಸನ್ನ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು ಯಾರಿಗೆ ತಾನೇ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಬೇ ಏರಿಯಾದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನಲ್ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಫೈಲಿಂಗ್, ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರಿಪರೇಷನ್, accounting, planning, bookkeeping services for individual ಅಥವಾ small business. ಯಾವುದೇ ಥರದ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ you can reach Prasanna Kumar at 408-222-0259. ಮೈಸೂರು ಶ್ರೀರಂಗ for all your automobile services. 20 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದಲೂ ಬೇರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅತ್ಯುತ್ತಮ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ವಾಹನದ ಆರೈಕೆಗೆ ಒನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಶ್ರೀ ಆಟೋ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್. ಶ್ರೀ ಆಟೋ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ ಫ್ರೀಮಾಂಟ್ನಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ಅವರ ಫೋನ್ ನಂಬರ್ 510-996-8404. ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ 510-996-8404. ಅಮೇರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಡ್ರೀಮ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಈ ಡ್ರೀಮ್ನ ಸಹಕಾರ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್. ಎಸ್, ರಿಯಲ್ ಎಸ್ಟೇಟಲ್ಲಿ ಟಾಪ್ ನಾಚ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಿರೋ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರೇ. ಕನ್ನಡದವರೇ ಆದ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಜೊತೆ ರಿಯಲ್ ಎಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಹೀ ಈಸ್ ಸೋ ನಾಲೆಜಬಲ್. ನನ್ನ ಪರ್ಸ್ನಲ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಲ್ ಎಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಇನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಡ್ರೀಮ್ ಹೌಸ್ ತೊಗೋಬೋದು, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಬೀಚ್ ಯೋರ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಹೋಮ್ ಆರ್ ಯೋರ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಆರ್ ಮೆನಿ ಮೋರ್. ಫಾರ್ ರೀಚ್ ಔಟ್ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಆಟ್ 408-420-0646 ಅಥವಾ gbangalore@interroad.com. ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಫ್ರೀಡಮ್ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ತಾನೇ ಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ? ಬಟ್ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ತಲೆನೋವು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಡೋಂಟ್ ವರಿ, ಫಾರ್ ಆಲ್ ಯುವರ್ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್, ಎಸ್, ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, 401k ರೋಲ್ ಓವರ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ರಿಟೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ಲಾನ್, ಡೆಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಎಜುಕೇಷನಲ್ ಸೇವಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ಫಿನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗ್, ಪ್ರೊಟೆಕ್ಷನ್, ಲೈಫ್, ಆಟೋ, ಹೋಮ್, ರೀಫೈನಾನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಮಾರ್ಗೇಜ್ ಲೋನ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ಲೀಗಲ್ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗೆ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಎಸ್, ರೀಚ್ ಔಟ್ ಟು ಅನಿಲ್ ಹಾಲಪ್ಪ. ಹೌದು, ಅನಿಲ್ ಹಾಲಪ್ಪ ಅವರ ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ 209-380-9858 ಅಥವಾ halappa@primerica.com. ನಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ಗಳಿಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಬಿಗ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ನಾವು ಕ್ಲೈಮೇಟ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಹಾಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನ ಕಾಪಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದಿನ ಪೀಳಿಗೆಗೆ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಅದ್ರ ಮುಂಚೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ನ RJ ಅನು ಅವರ ಒಂದು ನೇತೃತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಎಥ್ನಿಕ್ ಆರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅವರ ಸಹಯೋಗದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಗುರುಕುಲಂ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅಮೇಸಿಂಗ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ, ಕಾನ್ಸರ್ಟ್ ಬೈ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪರ್ಟ್ ಗುರೂಸ್, ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಹಾಗೆ ಸಂಗೀತ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಲಿವರ್ಮೋರ್ ಟೆಂಪಲ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ, ಕೇದಾರ್ನಾಥ್ ಹಾಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೇನ್ ಹೈಲೈಟ್ ವಿದ್ವಾನ್ BK ಶೇಷಾದ್ರಿ ಅವರ ಸಂಗೀತ ಕಚೇರಿ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಕಥಕ್, ಭರತನಾಟ್ಯ ಡ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ಕೂಡ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ನೀವು ಬೇರೆಯಾದಲ್ಲಿದ್ರೆ ಖಂಡಿತ ಹೋಗಿ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಟಿಕೆಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಅವೈಲಬಲ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ವಿಸಿಟ್ ಗುರುಕುಲಂ ಪೇಜ್. ಅಗೇನ್ ನಾವು ಶೈಲೇಶ್ ರಾವ್ ಹಾಗೂ ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ ಅವರು ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಹೇಗೆ ಹೌಸ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಅದೇ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ನ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸ್ತಾ ನೀವಿಬ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಡೇ ಟು ಡೇ ಲೈಫ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ನ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ಹಾಗೆ if it is like we also have lot of entrepreneurs listening, if it is a hotel business, allu kuda lot of waste agutte, even temple kuda where they serve food. So athara different organizations starting from household hege ನಾವು changes ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಾ? some tips and tricks ತರ.
So and for me, I say the number one thing you can do is to go vegan. Okay? And vegan with as local as possible, as organic as possible. So local, organic, vegan eating. So that is love, by the way. And when you do that, you are cutting out the waste right at the source. Because otherwise, when you eat animal products, the animal had to eat so much food to give you that product.
Correct.
And the entire thing is a waste. The animals are actually eating 5 times as much food as we eat, our domestic animals. Okay. So it's a factor of 5 that you're cutting out when you stop eating animal products. And then you have to look at every aspect of your life. Are we in alignment with nature? Are we doing, what are we using? Do we really need to use this? So when we start being mindful of that, we start consuming less and less and less. And what I found as I consumed less and less and less is I got happier and happier and happier. It's the opposite of what they've been telling us. You'll be happy if you consume a lot. No, you're happier when you consume less. Okay. Which is exactly what our ancestors have been telling us in India. Okay. Our ancestors didn't say, just keep going, keep satisfying your desires and you'll be happier and happier. Like Ravana, represents desires, right?
Correct.
And yeah, so So it is affirming what our ancestors have been telling us all along. Okay. The other thing that we can do is pressure our leaders to be in alignment with what they're saying. See, I just came back from the Parliament of World Religions last night. And in the Parliament of World Religions, everybody is talking about compassion for all life, compassion for all beings. You know, whenever you go to a talk, someone is talking about compassion for all beings. And then I step outside and I see beef burritos and chicken burritos being served in the cafes right outside. How is that compatible with what you just said? Right? I mean, especially as a Hindu, this is a gathering of all religions, and I'm telling them, how can you be so disrespectful of our tradition, our culture that says we shouldn't be eating beef, right? And they were serving, dairy in the lunches, and I'm telling them 60% of the people in the world cannot even digest that food. They cannot digest dairy properly. They have stomach problems when they eat dairy. They may not know it. They may be attributing it to other things, and they may be taking medicine for that. But ultimately, it's a dairy allergy. 60% of people have a dairy allergy. And yet you're serving dairy, right, as for lunches. How is that compatible with what you are saying? So it is, I mean, I went to a school, my granddaughter's school, and I told the children, basically, if you do what you say, the planet will be fine. You say you love animals, then don't eat them. Then the planet will be fine. Nature is ready to heal. She's still ready to heal. We can see that. Okay? So if we give her a chance, she will do the work for us. And nature is much more powerful than us, So we're constantly trying to fight her. We're constantly trying to set fires, cut down trees. We're constantly fighting nature. If we start helping nature, the planet will heal very quickly. I'm convinced of that too. So it is not a horror story. It's a story of transformation. So I'm telling people that nature is sending a signal saying, hey, it's time to change. It's time to transform. It's time to transform from a Kaurava civilization to a Pandava civilization, so to speak.
Kandita.
Yeah.
So
Kandita,
one
yeah.
follow-up question on that, right? Iga, how do you there is always a saying ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ವಾ, ಊಟ ತನ್ನಿಚ್ಛೆ ನೋಟ ಪರರಿಚ್ಛೆ ಅಂತ. So that is an Oberayan ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ, okay, that made sense. ಈಗ you have to be mindful of what you eat, like just like you explained. So again, that controversial question that I was telling you about is, so you are talking about vegan food, like this is some of the questions that I also get. So not slaughtering animals and stuff, but to grow certain vegetables, certain, food that only vegans can consume as a substitute. So that is taking lot of, natural resources.
Right.
Athwa ಈಗ, honey, of course, it's not vegan, but almond grow ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಷ್ಟೋ beesನೆಲ್ಲ they have to fly into certain regions where they grow these kind of food. So what is your take on that, and how do you justify that?
Yeah. See, monocultures are always bad. If you're growing just almonds everywhere, I mean, just only almond trees, you will need to get bees to come and and pollinate. But if you grow almonds as part of a natural ecosystem, there are insects already there. So why did you kill all the insects first? And now you have to bring the bees in to do the pollination. Number one. Number two, another complaint about almonds and avocados is that they use a lot of water.
Correct.
Right? But that is a tree. Almond grows on trees. In fact, if the tree is using a lot of water, we have to go and thank that tree for being so efficient at taking water from under the ground and transpiring it through the leaves and creating clouds for us. Yeah? So it's part of a positive water cycle. A tree is part of a positive water cycle. Whereas if you cut down a tree and you raise animals, then the water that you are feeding, to the water that you're using to grow the grass to feed the animals is part of a negative water cycle, meaning it is going to make the desert happen if you keep doing that. Whereas a tree is going to bring back bushes around the tree, it's going to bring back the forest around the tree if it's part of a natural ecosystem. Okay. So then an almond tree is actually the best tree to have because it's transpiring so much more water. It's circulating so much more water than other trees. Okay. So it's how you look at it and what is it part of. So I say that monocultures are no good. We have to create food for us now. So we have to completely change our food system from a profit-driven system in which we say, if an almond gives us the best profit, just keep planting lots and lots of almonds. Don't plant anything else because you make the most money. This is what's driving our actions. The money is driving our actions instead of saying, how do we restore the planet? So we have to create a system in which money is not driving the optimization criteria. Okay. And we can design a system like that. There's no, it's not a complex system to design. I've designed much more complex systems. Right.
So what is your also take on, like, we were talking during break also, like substitution for like all the vitamins, proteins that you get. Like people say, yeah, you don't need chicken. How are you getting your protein from?
Oh, it's well, it turns out that every plant food has every amino acid. So all plant foods have all amino acids. And in fact, there are certain plant foods have more protein per calorie than any animal food. Like broccoli has more protein per calorie than beef. So you have to look at it from a caloric perspective, because we eat a certain amount of calories, no matter whether we eat meat or we eat plant foods. We need a certain amount of calories to do our work, right? So let's say we're expending 2,000 calories a day. You'll be eating 2,000 calories of food. And for 2,000 calories of food, if it's plant food, you will get enough protein. If it's just rice and potatoes, you'll get enough protein.
Yeah, I have not heard of protein deficiency until they started making a big issue. Like, oh, you don't eat chicken, then yeah.
Right. There's plenty of protein. We look at all the land animals that grow really big, and they're all herbivores. Elephant is a herbivore. A gorilla is a herbivore. Where did they get their protein? From leaves. That's where they got it from.
ಒಂದು ಅದೇ ಅನ್ಕೋತಿದ್ದೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಅಜ್ಜಿ ತಾತಂದ್ರು ವೆಜಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ಸ್. ದೇ ಯೂಸ್ ಟು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ವ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಏಕಾದಶಿ ಅದು ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು. ನೆವರ್ ಸೀನ್ ದೆಮ್ ಪ್ರೋಟೀನ್ ಲೋ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮೈಂಡ್ ಇದಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸಮ್ ಮಿತ್ ದೇ ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಡ್ ಟು ಮೇಕ್ ಶೋರ್ ದಟ್ ದೇ ಸೆಲ್ ದೇರ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್. It's all comes back to the idea of who is making more money out of it. Because like Prateeksha was saying, food is something that cannot, it's like we consume 3 meals, minimum 3 meals a day. So, and there is also a saying, what you eat is what you become, right? So Prateeksha, like how do you think, like householdally we can start making those small changes? ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ, can you give some more tips?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, in addition to what Dr. Sailesh Rao said, I mean, I think just actually emphasizing one thing he said, just being mindful of every action you take, what is the impact of it? It's a curiosity question. I mean, we are all very curious people. Humans are curious by nature. So if you can just unlock that curiosity, and the next time you use some object, right, or you buy some object, you just think about, where did this come from? And what is going to happen to this after I'm done with it? Do I need it? Like, just think about everything for a little bit longer than we usually do. And I think that usually starts to unlock our mind to, that's what being mindful, of course, is just being more intentional. I think that would be the number one thing I would do, just across everything. And that kind of will, help identify in your own homes, what are some things which you need to do. Like it may be that in your particular home, you buy a lot of food and then you end up wasting. We know that a lot of homes do that. For that, just being more and more mindful. Use the CutWaste app, please. Something like that, right? Or maybe what you're consuming is very, very resource intense, right? Like you're eating meat, and just being aware of how resource intense what you're consuming is and what the impact of it is on everything. That makes you question, hey, should I be eating this? Or maybe the clothes that you buy, how did it come about? Where was it produced? Just thinking about it makes you, because what's happening is there is trillions and trillions of dollars worth of marketing working in a systemic fashion to get you to buy things you don't need, right? I have been there. I worked in I have marketed such things, so I know that it's an art, it's a science. There are established frameworks and systems that are designed to optimize sales. So that's what you're going up against. So the very simple thing you can do is just question and be like, hey, is this really what it's made out to be, or is there something to it? I think that would help in all facets of life.
Pandita, thank you so much. Nano, I was so inspired, and I was just thinking, like, sometimes if you're in US, you end up because you don't have help, you have to do a lot of things. One example, I make used to make 2-3 different breakfasts, one for my daughter and one for, and elladrullu chur uliyadu. You cannot eat, so I used to throw that away. So now I have cut down. Whatever it is, there is one meal is cooked, everybody has to adjust and eat. So that's my way of cutting down on food waste and that.
Right. Also, your effort, right? You're cutting down on your effort, making 3 different things, which not everybody will appreciate that. Only the person who's making it knows that.
Exactly. So we have some questions that have come in the chat. So I'll just ask whoever can answer, please. How important is milk for kids, and how can that be substituted if you go vegan? Anta?
Yeah, milk is it's been marketed as being important, but it is not. It's actually the growth fluid for a baby calf to grow into a big cow as quickly as possible. So when you try to grow yourself the same way as a calf, it'll cause cancer, it causes all kinds of problems in your body. Okay, so milk has been known, the casein, which is a protein in milk, is known to be one of the strongest carcinogens that we consume. Okay, in the lab, you can make cancer cells grow just by adding casein to it. Okay, so it's not a healthy thing for us to give our kids. There are many ways, you can substitute that. I would say, please consult a local plant-based nutritionist or plant-based telehealth. There is a group of doctors who will consult with you online. And these doctors have been trained in nutrition. Normally, doctors are not trained in nutrition. But if you go to a lifestyle medicine certified doctor, they've been trained in nutrition. Then you can ask them these questions and they will tell you what to do. And there are plant-based pediatricians who can help you out, because every child is different, But all we know is that every human being can live on a plant-based diet, exclusively plant-based diet, no matter at what stage of their life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So one other question is, how can we start training this young generation, like, kids at home, and make them aware and mindful of, the effects that their action that is creating? So young age ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ಬೋದು in a more creative way? Because if you say ಇದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇದಾಗತ್ತೆ, they will definitely do it, like, like they want to try it out themselves. So just to understand, how can we plant that seed? Anta. Prateeksha, do you want to take on this?
Yeah, I think, like, because this particular seed was planted in my head when I was young, I can very well go off of that. I think ultimately it's kids do what they see. That's my opinion. How parents behave, how everybody in the family is, what habits the parents kind of live, the kind of lifestyle they live, kids will take after that. It's very hard for you to inculcate something in your kids that you are not following yourself, I think.
Exactly.
So and if you do it, because a lot of this is just habit creation, we're just used to doing something, and we'll continue to do it until we have a very, very, very strong reason to switch. And that's human nature. And so if we can kind of get in at that point where those habits are being created, and just, if anything, even if you're not able to do it for yourself, if you can kind of start to make these changes in your life so that your kids will watch you and they will grow up kind of inculcating those habits, they need it more than anything, because ultimately, even if we have jumped off the cliff, we will probably be able to live out our lifetimes, but our kids and our grandkids, um, they will have a much harder time if we don't make these switches. So just live those changes, and the kids will watch you and will pick up on it.
So people say ಅಲ್ವಾ selfish ಆಗ್ಬೇಡಿ ಅಂತ, ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಈ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಟು ಸೇವ್ ಯುವರ್ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್ ಬಿ ಸೆಲ್ಫಿಶ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಬಿ ಮೈಂಡ್ಫುಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋ ತರ ಇತ್ತು.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In my case, my granddaughter actually became my teacher. It was the other way around. I decided to just listen to the children and understand from them, and because when they're born, they have this purity in them, and so she was able to teach me and show me things that are completely bonkers when you think about it, that we do, as we think it's normal to do it this way, and she's asking why. She was asking why. For instance, she asked me, why is King Dasharatha behaving this way? What is wrong with him? Why was he trying to shoot the deer? The deer was just drinking water in the river and he's shooting it. What is wrong with him? And so I couldn't even tell that story to her. She told me, don't ever read stories like this to me again. Okay. So, but we got inculcated into that violence as being normal. For her, violence was not normal. Okay. And so especially when you raise a child as a vegan, they keep that, purity. Because I really believe that children get traumatized when they find out what they're really eating. And then they try to put that trauma behind them, but it always stays within us, as trauma. It's a childhood trauma. But if you raise a child vegan, they don't go through that trauma.
Yep. When you know that something is wrong, why do you want to do it? Just because it tastes good, or because of the myths created by this big companies to make money, right? So I have another request, Sailesh ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟರಿ ಸೇಲ್ ಫಿಶ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಬಿಫೋರ್ ವಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲೋಸಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ.
Okay, sure. So the first documentary we did was called Human Experiment, and that is about the chemical pollution of the planet and how that is impacting everybody. Okay, it's one of the biggest ones actually that's impacting everybody, including all life, not just human beings. And then we did Cowspiracy and What the Health. And I mean, I'm just an executive producer. There are other people who are doing the documentary. I'm supporting them, saying, yes, that's something that I want to make sure that happens. And so we did Cowspiracy, which is about the environment and the impact of food on the environment. And then What the Health is the impact of food on our own health. And A Prayer for Compassion was the fourth one. And that's about the impact of food on our spiritual health.
Correct.
And he looked at it from every religious tradition. And every religious tradition, they said compassion for all life is part of our religion. Yeah. So, I mean, they all said veganism is foundational to our religion, except we have been given permission to deviate from it. They said, well, when do you stop saying, okay, I don't have that permission anymore? Anyway, that was the fourth one. And then we have done several after that. We did Milked, which is about New Zealand, dairy in New Zealand, the land of Ahimsa. which is about India and why India should be the land of ahimsa and why India needs to reclaim that role as the land of ahimsa. And then did something called The End of Medicine, and which is about the pandemic and what happened in the pandemic. And then we did one called They're Trying to Kill Us, which is, if we continue doing what people are asking you to do from the government and from corporations, we are going to be dead. So in essence, are they trying to kill us?
How can we watch all these documentaries? And then,
yeah, you can watch several of those documentaries are on YouTube, so you can just watch them. There is an app called Unchained TV, in which we have all the documentaries that we retire goes into Unchained TV.
okay.
So otherwise, the documentaries are on Netflix. Like Netflix got Conspiracy and What the Health. Amazon Prime has A Prayer for Compassion. But when they allow us to make it available for the public for free, we give it to Unchained TV.
Perfect. The reason I was asking is, I think we could only cover like what you both have accomplished and what you have studied, like probably about whatever is happening in this world, like probably 10-15%. I want our audience to go watch and get that awareness. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ 1 hour ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮುಗ್ದು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದೇ ನಮಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ಮುಗ್ದು ಹೋಯ್ತು ಅನ್ಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಿದೆ. ನಂಗೊಂಥರ ನನ್ನ ಲೈಫಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಐ ಆಮ್ ಪ್ರಿಟಿ ಶೂರ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಕೂಡ ಇದೇ ರೀತಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಅನ್ಸಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ನಮ್ಮ ತಂಡದ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸದಸ್ಯರಿಗೂ ತಮ್ಮ ವಿಡಿಯೋನ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಸಮಯ ಬೇಗ ಹೊರಟೋಯ್ತು. ಎಷ್ಟು ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಅರಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಳವಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ಬಹಳ ಟೈಮ್ ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ I sincerely want to thank Bengaluru Voice team for bringing this distinguished guests and educating not only me and also inspiring our entire audience. So thank you so much. And ಹಾಗೆ ಶೈಲೇಶ್ ಅವರೇ ಹಾಗೆ ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ, ತುಂಬಾ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಮೂಲ್ಯವಾದ ಸಮಯವನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ ಸ್ಯಾಟರ್ಡೆ ಮಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್. ಅಂಡ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಫಾರ್ ಶೇರಿಂಗ್ such wisdom which will definitely help us make our planet more safer. Again, thank you for joining us in this dialogue. Let's embark on this journey. Let's not forget whatever we have discovered, and it needs to be a collective action. So let's start from our individual homes. Let's start working on contributing and thinking what we can do. Even if it is ಅಳಿಲು ಸೇವೆ ಅಂತಾರಲ್ಲ ಆ ತರ, ಹಾಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ಲಾನೆಟ್ ನ ಮೋರ್ ರೆಸಿಲಿಯಂಟ್, ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಲ್ ಹಾಗೆ ಸಸ್ಟೈನಬಲ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದಿನ ಪೀಳಿಗೆಗೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಏನೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಶುಡ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಥಿಂಕಿಂಗ್. ಹಾಗೆ ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ನಾವ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವೋ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಳು ನೋಡ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಕಲಿತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಈ ವಾರದ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮನ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅಗೇನ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸೋ ಮಚ್ ಫಾರ್ ಜಾಯ್ನಿಂಗ್. ಇದೇ ರೀತಿ ಮುಂದಿನ ವಾರ ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ಬ ಸಾಧಕರನ್ನ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಂದು ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಆಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೈರ್ ಮಾಡೋದೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ನ ಉದ್ದೇಶ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತನಕ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ರಾರಾಜಿಸ್ತಿರ್ಲಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್. ಲಿಸನ್ ಟು ಯುವರ್ ಹಾರ್ಟ್.
ಆಲಿಸು ಗೆಳೆಯನ ಹೃದಯದ ಮಾತೊಂದ, ಬಿಚ್ಚಿಡು ಬಚ್ಚಿಟ್ಟ ಮನದ ಕನಸೊಂದ. ಹಿಂದೆ ಸಮಯ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಡಲು ನಮ್ಮ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ನಿನ್ನ ಸಾಹಸ ರಥಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾರಥಿಯಾಗಿ ಮುನ್ನಡೆಸಿದೆ. ನಿನ್ನ ಬಾನಂಗಳ ಕೆಳೆದೊಯ್ಯುವ ರೆಕ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಕೂಡಿದೆ. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ವಾಯ್ಸ್. Listen to your heart.